In Elden Ring, the demigods each embody a specific heroic concept that has become degraded. They each have a specific kind of nobility, and a specific way that that nobility is corrupted after the shattering. They each have their own theme, and they seem to each show the player a different way in which heroism and nobility can become debased. The following is a quote by Hidetaka Miyazaki before the game was released. Miyazaki is the director of Elden Ring and the president of From Software. Quote, "When Martin wrote these characters, and when he provided that origin story, that mythos for the world of Elden Ring, these demigods were much closer to their original form, and maybe closer to human form back then, before the shattering, before it all started. So it was more up to us to interpret this and say, how did they become such inhuman monsters? And how did the mad taint of the shattered shards of the Elden Ring and its power affect them? So that was our job, to take these grand heroes and sort of misshape them and distort them into something they were not. And I think that if we get a chance to show Martin, and if he gets a chance to see the game and to see these characters, I think he might be a bit shocked. When he wrote them, he was really envisioning something a little bit more human, a little bit more traditional human drama and fantasy characters. So I hope he gets a kick out of that." End quote. Later in that same interview, this is what Miyazaki said. Quote, "That process of taking these very human characters with flaws, but these very dramatic, heroic characters, and basically breaking them and making them into these misshapen, grotesque monsters, that was a lot of fun for me, personally." End quote. As you just heard, in this interview, Miyazaki explained the process by which the demigods came about. First, George R.R. Martin creates the characters, creates the mythos and their stories and their backstories. Martin imbues them with drama, with heroism, with nobility. By Miyazaki's accounts, they are still flawed characters, but very much human and heroic despite their flaws. And then Martin, having created the mythos, hands that over to From Software to read and to draw inspiration from. And then when Miyazaki gets his grubby little hands on the demigods, he bends and misshapes them. He turns their heroic concepts on their heads, and transforms them into something they were not meant to be. The most obvious example of how this works is with Godric the Grafted, because Godric is the only one in which Miyazaki personally described what his heroic concept was, and how that concept was degraded. The following is from a different interview with Miyazaki. The interviewer asks, "In previous interviews, you've said you aim to balance beauty and grotesqueness in boss design. Can you explain how you tackle this using the revealed bosses of Elden Ring?" Miyazaki answers as follows, quote, "What you're referring to in that balance between otherworldliness and a sense of beauty is most associated with Dark Souls boss characters. In Elden Ring, we wanted to take a slightly different approach because we had these brand new characters that George R.R. Martin wrote alongside the setting and mythos he provided for the world. He created these very heroic and grandiose designs, essentially these demigods from the history of Elden Ring's world. So we wanted to take what he provided us and create a new core for these characters and how we design them. From the boss designs that we've revealed so far, the one that I feel is a good match for how we take the heroic concept and twist and misshape it, due to the power of the Elden Ring shards, is Godric the Grafted. He is an excellent example of this because he encompasses that feeling of sadness and frustration when a lord comes to the end of his reign, trying to cling desperately to the power he still has left. In this way, Godric is a great embodiment of that new design approach." End quote. So that's the case for Godric. He's the fallen king archetype that Miyazaki is so fond of. But the other demigods are no different. They each also embody a specific heroic concept and are degraded in a specific way. Which at last brings me to the point of this video. What is the heroic concept of Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy? I believe that Rykard is a Lucifer archetype, the archetype of rebellion. Now, the Lucifer archetype that I'm describing, where Lucifer represents a kind of noble spirit of freedom, is not really something that existed in antiquity. It's a mostly modern invention. Probably the first time it really entered the public consciousness was in John Milton's Paradise Lost. In the book, Lucifer is depicted as intelligent and thoughtful, a being whose pride caused him to chafe under the yoke of the Almighty. Let me here read a small but very famous portion of the book, so you can get an idea of what his character is like. This takes place after Lucifer has been cast out of heaven, and is musing about his new situation. Quote, "Is this the region? This the soil, the clime?" said then the lost archangel. "This the seat that we must change for heaven? This mournful gloom for that celestial light? Be it so, since he who is now sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is best. Whom reason hath equalled, force hath made supreme above his equals. Farewell, happy fields, where joy forever dwells. Hail, horrors! Hail, infernal world! And thou, profoundest hell, receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, or a hell of heaven. What matter where, if I still be the same? And what should I be all the less but he, whom thunder hath made greater? Here at least we shall be free. The Almighty hath not built here for his envy, will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice, to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." End quote. After this book was written, the idea of Lucifer as a kind of noble, rebellious hero gained traction and popularity, and today it's all over the place. Probably the most obvious examples are in the Shin Megami Tensei and Persona franchises. In Shin Megami Tensei, God is often depicted as a kind of celestial tyrant, a being of stagnant and absolute order. And Lucifer is depicted as an agent of chaos, obsessed with freedom and with ending that order. Even in Persona 5, the final boss is a Gnostic version of God that represents tyrannical order, and the final persona that you use to beat it is a Gnostic version of Lucifer that represents breaking free of chains. And it is this popularized modern conception of Lucifer that I believe is Rykard's inspiration. Like Lucifer, Rykard also chafes under the yoke of the Erdtree, and lures others to his cause by trying to incite disgust at the idea of servitude.
So, tarnished, have you ever harbored doubts about the burden of grace and the dogmatic ramblings of the fingers? If you have, why not join the Volcano Manor and fight with us, rise with us, against the Erdtree? The Erdtree blessed the tarnished with grace, but it was all too meager in the face of the enormity of their task. The tarnished were forced to scavenge, squabbling for crumbs, like the shard-bearers vying for power in the wake of the shattering. Our Lord, indignant, has refused to scurry about, fighting over what miserly scraps they allow us. If the Erdtree, and indeed the very gods, would debase us so, then we are willing to raise the banner of resistance, even if it means heresy. We at the Volcano Manor, under Lord Rykard, have sworn no rest until it is done.
Those who joined Volcano Manor become recusants. The word recusant means someone who refuses to submit to an authority or comply with a regulation. Rykard's heroic concept was his ambition to revolt against the Erdtree. But like Miyazaki said, all of these heroic concepts get twisted and misshapen. Rykard too is degraded, though not by the blasphemy.
Praetor Rykard's ambitions, though blasphemous, marked him a worthy sovereign, but they were reduced to gluttonous depravity once he gave himself to the Serpent. Whatever that thing is, it is no longer Praetor Rykard. Someone must kill him to spare him and his ambitions from further dishonor.
The ghost that says this in Volcano Manor is wearing the Gelmir knight armor. The description to that armor reads, "Armor worn by knights once loyal to Praetor Rykard. It bears an emblem that none wear today, standing as it does for a lord that fell from loft ambition into gluttonous depravity. As the lord lost his dignity, so too did these knights lose their master." The knights of Gelmir were loyal to Rykard. They agreed with his reasoning for rebelling against the Erdtree, and they were determined to see their master's ambition realized. The blasphemy didn't seem to bother them one bit. It was not until Rykard fed himself to the great serpent that he lost the faith of his knights. Why? Because at that point they could detect that it was not just about the gods. Whatever Rykard's words may say, they could tell that he was no longer motivated by a noble ambition, but rather by simple greed. Elden Ring isn't the first game in which serpents for Miyazaki represent a kind of gluttony. The Covetous Serpent Ring item description reads, "The serpent's habit of devouring prey even larger than itself has led to an association with gluttony." In Dark Souls 3, the same ring reads, "Snakes are known as creatures of great avarice, devouring prey even larger than themselves by swallowing them whole. If one's shackles are a cause for discontent, perhaps it is time for some old-fashioned greed." The knights could not bear to see their lord degraded so. Their loyalty compelled them to look for a solution. The Serpent Hunter item description reads, "When their master's heroic aspirations degenerated into mere greed, his men searched for a weapon with which they might halt their lord." So that's my conclusion. Rykard is a modern Lucifer archetype, ennobled by his ambition, and debased when that ambition turns to simple gluttony. Now there's a few more things about Rykard that I think could point to his Lucifer inspiration. But I'm not sure, and a lot of this could be coincidence, so I thought I'd leave it here at the end. But they could also just be illusions. Illusions just evoke something in your mind without having to say anything about it explicitly. And I think these probably fall under that category. First of all, it's just the location of it being a volcano. The mountain, with its sea of magma, its cages and its torture devices, could be trying to allude to hell. Another thing is the Serpent Hunter, the weapon that you use to beat Rykard. In Christian depictions of Saint Michael, he's often shown to be using a spear to defeat Lucifer as a dragon or a serpent. This imagery comes from the Book of Revelations. Starting at Revelation 12:7, it reads, "The war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels battled against the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought back, but they did not prevail, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. The huge dragon, the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, who deceived the world, was thrown down to earth." Now, the Serpent Hunter item description reads, "Weapon that serves both as a greatsword and spear. Thought to have been used to hunt an immortal, great serpent in the distant past. It manifests a long blade of light when facing such a creature." I don't think it's too much of a reach to suspect that the Serpent Hunter is supposed to allude to St. Michael's spear. Finally, I want to point to Rykard's boss design as a whole. He looks like a demon. If the King of Hell is real, something like this is what I expect he would look like. His boss room is littered with corpses. His big attack, where he summons countless skulls to come after you, is so cinematic. It's like you're looking at a vision of hell. It doesn't even look like you're indoors anymore. It looks like you've been transported to hell and are about to receive the penal fire.